Aleya Antoine, welcome to the show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your show.
Hi, well, I'm really excited to be here. So my name is Aleya, and I have a show that I recently started in June. It's called Tease, and I started it because I knew that I would be wrapping up my senior year here at UTSA, and I'm a communications major too, so I definitely had a lot to do with it. I love talking. I love talking to people.
Tell us a little bit about the purpose of your show.
I wanted to create like an environment that was a fun and safe space for people. With a lot of shows that I listen to a lot of podcasts. They're either like really fun, but they don't have that in-depth part. Or like when you go to like intersectionality, like if I were to listen to like a podcast catered for women, maybe it's only about women, or a podcast catered to like Black people. It's only talking about like Black struggles, and then also like LGBTQ. It will only focus on that. And I couldn't really find a podcast that had like intersectional viewpoints. So like for me, like I'm queer, I'm Black, I'm a woman. And so I usually have to pick a podcast just in each of those categories. And I wanted to create an environment to where I could kind of like blend those all together, but make it still fun and not make it just about like the hardships that you face in any of those communities, but also just about like socializing and knowing that like life is still fun. You don't always have to focus on like the struggles or the hardships. So that was, and so just like create solidarity with my audience and everything. So that's kind of why I started it.
Awesome. And you started this idea before you took the podcasting course. You were already kind of ahead of the game there. How much had you set in stone before you started the course?
Well, so I actually had a podcast my freshman year of college. When I went to Aleya Christian University, and I transferred to UTSA like right after my freshman year. I was like, I need to be back in the city. And so I already knew about like recording, I knew about editing, but when I had first started in 2020, there was only audio podcasts. So I remember I used to record on like voice notes with like one microphone in my dorm room at like midnight. And so I knew always that I wanted to start it back up, but I was working while in school and it was just too much. I couldn't keep up with it. And so with the end of my senior year coming up, I was like, now I was just thinking, and I was like, I feel like I have to do it now. Like it popped into my head again. And so I had already gotten my camera. I had already gotten my mics and everything. I had already made the trailer, the first episode, I believe. And I was working on like getting the socials up and everything. I bought the domain name for the podcast, the business emails, the hosting website. So I kind of had the foundation already set, but the ball had like barely just started rolling. Like it was like just the foundation was what I had, and that was it.
And for those who are struggling to get started, for those who are struggling with that foundational part of figuring out what it is they want to talk about, what advice do you have for them? Because it sounds like it came real naturally to you, but usually people struggle with this.
Yeah, I would say that my biggest advice would be pick something that you want to talk about. So for me, honestly, so I also do content creation, and one of my biggest struggles with that was niching down. Like I have such a hard time picking a niche or fitting into one. And so for my podcast, I wanted to talk about everything. So then that kind of just became it. And I think like really lean into what you want to talk about. Like even the colors for mine are pink and red, like the pose right here. And so even for branding, like pick colors that you like. Pick an environment that you want to record in, pick in topics that you like. And if I tried to force myself to like do like, let's say a cooking one, I would only have like 2 episodes. So I would never keep up with it. So picking something that I was passionate about, I think came naturally because your passions also come naturally.
For sure. So you had the foundation, you knew what you were passionate about. What helped you in this course with your podcast? Because you already had so many great things already set in motion.
Yeah, so one thing that the course really came in and saved me with was that I had no instruction. Like my only instruction was from listening to other shows, stalking other shows on social media, watching YouTube videos, but I had no one to like actually talk to, or just like advice that was given without maybe it being for the views, or maybe it just being from their own perspective. Like there was no blueprint on it. So I think that this course really helped me, is that one, just having something to confirm that I was doing the right things was really helpful. Like I took probably a day trying to figure out, do I want to use Buzzsprout, Spotify for podcasters? And then the course came in and it like just validated, okay, I picked a good platform. So I think it really helped with validation. And then it also helped with, I think that the little questions are the things that you have the hardest time answering. Like people will tell you how to do a domain and how to do the big things, but no one tells you like the small audio edits that you should do, or like how do you get in touch with like this specific audience, or like my class dates were like, okay, this episode was good, but maybe take off like 5 to 10 minutes of it. No one was going to tell me that stuff. So I think it really helped with like the details, which to me, I'm very detail oriented. So those are the things driving me the most crazy. So that's what really helped.
So the peer reviews, it sounds like, was a really valuable aspect for you. I know that for different people, they get different things out of the course. They get different things about the experience. But yeah, people who already are fans of the show, people who are you know, finding it for the first time, aren't as likely to give you that kind of substantive, critical feedback. So I'm glad that the peer review experience helped with that, because that dimension, I think, is important. What are some other things that you maybe struggled with and overcame during the course of the course?
You know, I would say the audio. The audio was a big thing. I thought if you just buy a good mic, you're done. And I didn't know that like audio, I get audio engineers, like there's 2 sides to the channel, and then you have to tweak this and make sure to go over this many decibels. So of course helped me with that a lot. And then your feedback with the Adobe, I've been using that religiously now. And then it also helped with the marketing a lot, because for my marketing, I really wanted it to be personal, but I hadn't really seen too many podcasters do things in person for their marketing. Everything's very virtual. So I thought maybe it would be weird if I like walked around Seattle with stickers of my podcast, or like if I hung up flyers all over, like we have like the club district in Seattle. When I first started, was recording for sometimes almost 2 hours, and it would just be way too much shit to where editing was making me start to dislike the process a lot. And so I remember gave the feedback of set a recording limit. And before I thought that was a bad idea, because I was like, well, what if I don't get in everything? But then I tried it and I was like, oh my gosh, I just edited this episode in a day where it used to take me like 3 days. So it helps so much with the length when recording, and then also knowing what to edit it down to.
Wow. And you just covered a bunch of ground there, right? You talked about the limit last, right? Like making sure that we have a good recording limit so that we can have a manageable bite-sized editing experience. You talked about the AI voice enhance, Adobe AI voice enhance, and how that helped. I before we had Adobe AI voice enhance, you know, we had to go through in Adobe Audition and select the noise level and limit it, and then there was just all these different audio engineering steps to do. Yeah. Now the AI takes care of some of that for you, which is really nice. It doesn't do the ducking yet. It doesn't do the music intro yet. You still have to work on all those little things, but it's really nice to have that voice engineering at least partially done for us. And there are more tools coming online every day too, which is a lot of fun.
Yes.
I know you have a lot of personality injected into your show. It's a lot of, this is me, this is who I am. And I know a lot of students struggle with that. They struggle with putting themselves out there. They struggle with, you know, this is me, this is who I am, personality, that personal brand. Can you speak a little bit to those folks who might be struggling to find their voice, and maybe some advice on how they can find their voice to be as forward as you are with your personality?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Honestly, I still struggle with it. I would say that for me, the biggest part that I struggle with is actually like uploading. It's like maybe not uploading it, but it's the post upload that really gets me to where I'm like, oh my gosh, like if someone judges the podcast, it feels like they're judging me, you know? And then like, okay, I'm really making a digital footprint by putting my personality out there. I still struggle with it, especially like after uploading, and once I turn off my phone, I'm like, wait, okay, that's out there. Especially like when I upload small clips to Instagram or TikTok. Those have me sweating. But I think what helps me do it a lot is that, one, there really is no other alternative to do that, because I have like some favorite shows and you can just tell when someone's not being yourself. So one thing that even I tell my guests too is like, when you're feeling shy, you may feel like, okay, I want to pull back, I don't want to do this. But that's actually when you end up looking even worse. Like, you end up becoming your worst fear by not going all in. It's like the thing when you watch TV, the actors who don't hold back are the best ones. Reality TV, the characters who are the most like that are always the most liked. And so I think not being authentic might actually make your fears come true. And that's what I had to tell myself. And then also, I think just what helps is that you'll learn like from your audience feedback that like people, they like real emotions. And so there's the episode where I like teared up a little bit on it. And I was like, oh, I should cut that out. But I looked back at one of my past podcasts and I thought, whenever I heard her really upset, I didn't judge her and think, oh, she sounds crazy. I was like, no, she's like speaking from the heart. So I guess also looking at your own feedback that you give to other people. Like, I have 2 podcasts that I listen to, and I won't say the shows, but I think a lot of people probably know them. They used to podcast together and now they're separate. One of them is probably a little bit more successful than the other, but the other one is actually my favorite one because she's just so real. And I see a lot of her comments say that, like, I know that maybe you may look and think, oh, wait, she's doing more, but I think the thing that she has that's the most invaluable thing is her personality. And that's what makes for listeners like her. And so I think that getting your personality is how you become successful with it, but it's also like the only way to do it. And then also just knowing that it's going to look worse if you don't go all the way in. It's just better to give it your all.
And we have students who are super soft-spoken, aren't as extroverted, but they lean into their introversion. They lean into their soft-spokenness.
Yeah.
And it works great because they're just being themselves and they're inviting an audience on a journey with them about whatever it is that they've chosen to talk about. Can you speak a little bit about your journey in podcasting and how that looked when we started and how it looks now that we're at the end?
Yeah. First thing I would say is I do agree. Like, it's like leaning into your own personality. Like, me personally, I love introverts. I don't know what it is, but all of my friends are introverted. A lot of the shows I listen to, like, I don't know, I love introverts. I think they're so interesting and hilarious. And so, yeah, leaning into just like what's you and not the opposite would work so well. But ending my podcasting journey, when I first started, I was super optimistic, super excited. And while I was building everything, it was having a lot of fun. I think when it got to the trailer to first episode, it started feeling kind of difficult. And that you're just kind of like, it's one of those things where you do a bunch of little things and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, it's actually happening. Like, it's like you apply to a bunch of schools and then all of a sudden you're going to college and you're like, I forgot that it actually happened. So I think that was the hard part. And then I think also figuring out what my middle ground was while talking. Like, do I need to be, you see some people become super big in the space from being super opinionated, out there saying outrageous things. It was something that was difficult for me was like, do I need to be outrageous and over the top, or can I just be like myself, or should I dial it down? And so I think that even in my episodes, if you kind of listen to them, some of them might have a little bit more like zest and others may be more reserved. And I think that it's just been me practicing like what's the best way to speak and then also what's the best way to market it. I wouldn't say that like I know exactly where I'm at yet with it, but I would say that like I've become more comfortable. Like even the way that I edit, I used to edit super like take out every breath. And now I like kind of leave it there. And so I would say that I'm kind of on the road to being my most authentic self. Like I remember I had an episode to where, I forgot what I put it, but like the original YouTube thumbnail, I remember I made a podcast episode that was about Pride Weekend in Seattle. And when I looked up like Pride and I talked about like coming out, I listened to different coming out stories. All of the thumbnails that like blew up were like a little bit like negative, like they had some sort of like negative zest to them. So I thought maybe I should make my thumbnail that's a little bit more negative. So I put like something's overrated or something like that. I forgot what I put. But it didn't do as well. So I changed it to my original option that I had. And then all of a sudden it got more reviews. So also I think that my biggest thing would be not overly like educate yourself. Like, don't watch YouTube video after YouTube video telling you this is how you blow this up. This is how you do it this. And this is like make it look like it's going to be negative as clickbait. And then all of a sudden you're positive in the episode, absorbing, I think, too much information. But it was like messing with like my actual authentic ideas. Because if I had just went with the original thumbnail, who knows how many views I could have been at that time. And then also like it will discourage you. Like if you're watching and someone's telling you you're doing everything wrong, it will discourage you. And so like I had to stop overly indulging in like information, especially when the person that was giving the information wasn't even in the same like niche or like vibe that I was doing. So I think that's been my biggest journey, is like just like going with my original ideas and my original thoughts and not trying to like follow a crowd.
I love that you mentioned this, because this is something that artists have struggled with since the beginning of an economy, right? Like the tension between doing art for you and doing art for the markets. And in this class, we talk about how it is important to adapt to audiences, aka the markets, but that balance and that tension is hard to negotiate. And I'm glad you acknowledge that difficulty, because the best experts have the best advice, but it's not necessarily advice for you to follow and for your specific podcast, for your specific people, right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed any other things that surprised you in your journey in terms of, hey, I thought it was going to be like this, but then I did this and I was surprised. And it turns out this worked better than what they said, kind of like what you just described.
Yeah, I would say for me, like, and I guess my audience leaning into the positive, I think my audience is very like positive, upbeat people. And I don't think they like negative clickbait. I don't think they like it. So that was one surprising, because even my favorite podcast, they tend to do the negative thing. And I think what was also surprising was some of my audience's favorite episodes have been the episodes I was like, I guess, the most vulnerable in, or like maybe shared some sad things, but it was like more authentic. Like at first I thought, if I don't have some surprising, crazy story every single episode, then it's not going to work. It's also because I've been in a relationship. So like I can't even talk about like dating all the time, which is what a lot of people like to talk about. But I think that my audience doesn't care about that. And they actually like just knowing everyday stories that they can relate to. And one of my listeners actually sent me a voice note and was like, like I listened to Cancel, I listened to Call Daddy, and I love their stories. It's exciting, but I've never really engaged because I don't relate. Whereas like your story, maybe like you don't think that it's all the way out there, but to me, it's what I need to hear because it's relatable. And so I think also just being relatable is like really trendy now. And even though you hear that, you still don't believe it because you think, okay, well, my relatable isn't the relatable that's going to work though. And so I guess learning that my audience likes what I have to say, even if I don't think that it's super dramatic, and that they just like the podcast for itself without having to go the extra mile for outrageousness, was really surprising.
So we don't always have to push the envelope.
Yeah.
Pushing the envelope might not be appropriate. How do you invite your guests to feel comfortable speaking with you? Because I know that's something else that some people struggle with. No matter how great you are at talking, like we're doing now, like I think that we're both pretty good at carrying a conversation. But whenever it gets to a recorded podcast, a lot of times people clam up. They get kind of tense. They're kind of like, oh no, I'm on camera. How do you put your guests at ease?
I would say my guests on the show, the first thing I do is I ask them, do you want me to tell you what I'm going to be talking about? Or like, how do you want to know? Because I've had 2 guests on so far. And a lot of them was like, don't tell me anything about what we're talking about. I don't want to know because I'll just overthink it. I was like, okay. And then my other guest was my partner, Kai. And I was like, what do you want to know? Kai was like, just give me the overall vibe. Like, give me the bullet points that we're going to discuss, but don't tell me the nitty gritty. That was surprising because neither of them wanted to know the actual questions. And so I think that's one thing that helps is asking like, how would you like me to prep you for it? Because even for my show, I don't like to listen to the voice memos that I do with my brainstorms until the day of. Because if I listen to it a day before, I'm going to overthink it the whole day, and then I probably won't have anything to talk about. And so I guess one thing would be to ask them like how they like their prep. And then also I think just being comfortable. Like I don't lean into their awkwardness. I could tell that they're feeling awkward. I stay comfortable and I just like invite them to be comfortable too. If you feel like you had to ask them 3 questions in a row, that's okay. Sometimes people like to just answer questions instead of like have the complete dialogue. And so even I could tell like in that you could see like they're gradually getting more comfortable. So I think just like not pushing them to something they're uncomfortable with, but if you're comfortable the whole time, they'll meet you there. So I think, yeah. And then also having guests that you believe in, because I actually had a guest and we had planned it all towards like the last second. I could just tell we actually recorded like 10 minutes and she was just very negative about it. Her knees weren't even angled towards mine. It was like the body language was just terrible, was dragging through it. And so I had to just stop their recording and be like, I don't think you're into this. And it was great that I did that because she actually finally admitted, yeah, no, I don't think I was into it either. So that was a hard thing to learn, was that you also have to like make executive decisions. And
just because they're not into it doesn't mean you can't have a great conversation off camera, right? Like it doesn't have to, everything doesn't have to be a podcast, especially whenever it's planned. Plans always change, right? Can you give us another example of things that you planned and then had to try to change or adapt as you were developing things?
Yeah, I tried to do a vlog episode and I was going to have my friend, they had offered to like videograph it. And at the last minute, they just kind of backed out. And so if there's one thing that I've also learned is that like, you should be your plan's Z. Like, let's say that you have all of these plans and how other people are going to help you. Just know that if they all fall through, that you can carry it out. And so at the very last minute, they said no. So I had to videograph my entire time, which is hard because I was also supposed to be the one in it too. But I had also mentally prepared, like, okay, I can use the mirror for her, I could do this. So I think like as much as like you can't rely on others, like you need to be able to rely on yourself. Like I wouldn't come up with any ideas that where you don't have a backup plan that you can take on. Like even for my cover photo, my partner and our friend were supposed to help me with it and they showed up 3 hours late. So I had to set up the entire backdrop, the props, get the camera. Like I set up everything myself. And when they were there, they just took the photos, but originally I thought they were going to help me. And so and that's also maybe just something I have to learn, but it also helps you find confidence in yourself, I think, because then I don't look back at any of those things like, oh, they fell through. I kind of look at them more like, oh, I was able to still do it. Like, it's great to have help, but it's also great that you have yourself still.
Self-reliance, making sure that you have plans that you're prepared for them to fail, right? Because as the old saying goes, no plan survived contact with the real world, right? So
yeah,
it's nice to hear that backup planning is happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite episode and why?
I would say that my favorite episode was, I think it would be episode 6. It was called Confidence is the Best Served Taught. And so my favorite episode 1, because the title took me so long to come up with. Usually I have my titles before I even have the episode. I don't know how it happens. And that one, I did not know until 20 minutes before, but I ended up loving it. I think I liked that one a lot because my past episodes, I always focused on interpersonal conflicts that I had. And this one, I kind of shared like an intrapersonal one. Like I shared my own personal struggles and my own personal battles that didn't even have to do with other people. And so that was really nerve-wracking for me, but I was really proud of it that I was able to talk about it and then to share it and then continue sharing it, you know? And then also I was really proud of that one because I had finally mastered the audio thing. And then this whole course I've been trying to work on my segues. And that episode just flowed from story to story, but like with lessons and like plots in between. And so I think that the way that the stories kind of wove into also giving advice while also sharing, while also keeping up with, I don't know, like I just liked the way that episode flowed. Like I was able to, I think the way that I did it was I told what was happening in the present. And then I went back and told a backstory that went into it. And then I would go back into the present and then lead into the next one. And so that was my favorite episode just because it was so part of the present. It was also part of the past. And it was about confidence too. And I have a lot of listeners, I think, that struggle with confidence, just like as a result of like society stuff or their own things. And so that episode, it didn't get the most views, but it got me the most feedback. But I knew that it was good because the feedback wasn't like public feedback. It was like personal DMs or like personal messages, which sometimes is even sweeter because you know, like, okay, it must have touched you if you're really to reach out personally.
Exactly. And the data that you get back isn't always the best indicator of how you did too, right? Because I know a lot of our podcasters see single digit numbers and they get so discouraged. And they're like, oh man, I've done all this work. I'm pouring all this effort to learn the stuff, to apply what I learned. And then the feedback mechanisms that the platforms have set up say you're going to have to be way more consistent for a lot longer. And that's usually how everyone starts. Can you speak a little bit to that struggle?
Yeah, I am like the queen struggling with this. I probably cry at least twice, maybe 3 times. Once a week when I get up, like 3 times probably a week about this. Like, I will be so excited on episode of releases, and that day I'm in tears. It's like, it's terrible. But I think the thing that's gotten me to push past that is one, like, also learning just how to read analytics. I learned this, like, just from doing content creation. Like, it's not about followers. It's not about likes. It's like when you go in, you can see impressions. You can see your reach. You can see the engagement. Like, you may think, like, I only have 3,000 followers, but then your insights tell you that you reached 120,000 accounts. And you're like, hey, you know what I mean? And so I think one, learning how to actually learn and read your analytics and not paying attention to those. Because like at this moment, I'm like almost at 30 subscribers on YouTube, which is pretty low. But my impressions and views my views have gone over 6,000 and my impressions have gone over like almost 200,000. And I think it's also just like knowing the market that you're in. Like, I'm in Gen Z. Gen Z is stingy with their followers. They're stingy with their likes, you know, whereas like a millennial audience, I've noticed, follows really quickly. They like pretty much anything. And so also just knowing the market that you're going for, especially like lifestyle content, the follows and stuff are going to come a lot slower than, let's say, if you were a gym influencer, because everyone loves to work out. So, and then also actually don't scroll on social media, which is kind of weird because like I do content creation and podcasting, but like I pretty much don't know any trend unless I am like, actually, what do they call it? It's like purposeful play. So like if I scroll on Instagram, it's because I'm trying to find what do I want to do with my content. I don't mindlessly scroll. I don't mindlessly scroll on TikTok because it ends up making me sad and I compare myself. So I think also like knowing the boundaries that you have to put, like if you're constantly scrolling and you realize that every time you do that, you're upset, like then you need to make a change. You know what I mean? And like, it's hard to like even acknowledge you're successful. You're comparing yourself to other people. So like, trying to really like get rid of that comparison and envy mode, and then also like pay attention to other people's stories. Like I love hearing success stories at other podcasts where we're like, I didn't have anything for 6 months, and then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? And then also it's just social media. I've had stuff that like got a bunch of views a month later when I wasn't paying attention at all, you know? And so I think just like knowing that there's a bigger picture has really helped me. And then also just knowing that the only thing worse than a low view is just completely giving up. I would rather just get a bunch of low views and then eventually be successful than like be the person that everyone's like, oh, she stopped. You know what I mean? And so, and if you like it and you're having fun with it, like, then that's all that matters. And even if you have 2 listeners, but they're really touched by what you're sharing, like, I think that's important. And since you kind of already engaged them, like, I feel like I still owe them more episodes in a way. Like, I'm not going to just be like, you're not enough. Sorry. So I pay attention to like what I do already have to.
That's really helpful advice. And this whole idea of subs and followers, it was all upended by the For You page and the algorithms and all the platforms that followed suit, right? Because the feedback that you get is based on the first few seconds of your video usually, right? So thinking about how to engineer that, thinking about how to balance what you want to do for your art, for your voice and your authenticity, and balancing that against the algorithm is always a struggle, like we talked about.
It is.
You gave great advice to people struggling with the negotiation of these social platforms for content creation and podcasting. What other advice did you give or would you give to your fellow podcasters? What other specifics did you find yourself writing or seeing again and again on the pages and the peer reviews for your colleagues?
So I will say what got me to also just to listen to my episodes was everyone told me that they were long. And so I shortened it, and the next video, the views got a lot better. And I went and looked at the retention rate, and my retention got a lot better. So one thing is actually, like how I said, like learning how to like look at your insights, learning how to act on them too. For me, I was trying to increase my views on YouTube. So I went to my analytics and was like, where am I getting my views from? Where are they coming from? So that way I could get more of them, like a few hours, you know? And so I saw that a lot of my views were coming from my homepage and my shorts and my suggestion, which was crazy to me because I had not put any time into my homepage. I was barely posting shorts, and I didn't even have end screens or anything. Like, I was focusing on thumbnail, title, and then those tags that you put at the bottom, because that's what a YouTube video told me to do. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's not even where my views are coming from. So I started uploading every single reel that I do on TikTok, I do on Instagram. I started uploading all of them to YouTube Shorts because I was getting views on my episodes from that. They increased. I changed my whole homepage to make it cohesive, make it engaging. That also increased it. And then I added end screens. And so then I went back a couple weeks later and saw, like, did it actually work? And it did. It got them up. So I think also learning how to find out your problem and then address it, because I used to avoid my insights. Like, I was like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Don't tell me. But learning them, even though it's hard and you kind of have to like get rid of that mental block because you might like take the feedback as negative, but it can really help you. And so, and it gives you like, because a follow, just seeing that you have low followers is going to tell you what to fix. And then also, like, if someone's giving you constructive criticism and it's not coming from like a place of like hatred or dislike from you, like they're just giving you helpful advice, like really consider it. Like, I had classmates again told me to shorten it, and then I remember you commented on the audio and I fixed that and it got better. And then even like my guests were like, hey, like I liked it when you did this, you know what I mean? So it's not that people are never like trying to give you advice because they're coming at you most of the time. They're like actually trying to help you improve. And so I had to learn how to take on that criticism, but it's helped me so much.
And that's how we grow. The taking of criticism, the taking of data, the taking of the algorithm, the taking of the stats, the insights, all of this is just ways that you can take to grow, right?
Yeah.
This is an avenue for change. This is an idea for change in a positive direction.
Yeah.
You have done things that most people don't do for their podcast when they first start podcasting, because just getting your podcast off the ground is a lot of work.
Yeah.
If I were to add a requirement saying you also need to do this, this, and this, some of the things that you mentioned, I would feel like I'm abusing my students because it's just too much. But what you've proven is these extra steps and this extra work are great ways to grow your show. You mentioned shorts. You mentioned TikToks. You mentioned Reels. You mentioned these other platforms. Where have you seen the most success for your specific personal brand and podcasting efforts?
Yeah, I would say that I've seen a lot of success, which is actually crazy, the most in person. I actually got a lot of my listeners from, I made stickers for my show that had a QR code on it. I made flyers and I put those up, and a lot of those people went to all of the different platforms, whichever one they prefer to listen. And so I would say that in person has been my like one that has gotten the most attention just based on listeners. Obviously not on views because I can't reach 1,000 people in one day, but the people that I know in person, I found they went and actually listened. And as far as social media, I would say that Instagram has gotten me the biggest audience, but TikTok has also gotten me the most views on the content, but then my actual listening platforms sometimes have more. So it's kind of like, again, if you have to look at it as a collective audience and not just like Instagram, just this, But I would say that Instagram is essential for a podcast, especially if you're trying to reach like people in their 20s. It's like the most basic social media app. So I think that one is pretty all encompassing. TikTok, the way that I do it is I focus on Instagram and I repurpose everything across platforms. So when I put on my Instagram reels, I then put on a TikTok reel, and then I put it on my YouTube shorts. And so that also helps me not feel like anything that I'm doing, how you mentioned, was like going to waste or like I put all this time and effort. Because the weird thing is, if it's something that does really well on Instagram, it doesn't do as well on TikTok, but then my stuff that does well on TikTok doesn't do well on Instagram. So I found that just putting it on all three, I'm like, whoever like whichever audience here likes it the most. And so I would say the easiest way that I've been able to do it on all those platforms is by repurposing everything. And then even when I do stuff in person, like handing out stuff, I record it while I'm doing it. Because even if I only handed it to 50 people, I'm like, well, I'm going to hand this to 50 people, but then I'm going to triple it by getting like 3,000 views on the reel, and then it goes further. So that's also a thing. It's just like thinking, how can I milk out this one thing that I'm doing?
That's awesome. And how do you repurpose clips from the podcast for your other content? And
yeah,
has that been useful and successful and actually going through and saying, ooh, this would be a perfect for a reel or a TikTok?
Yeah, so I used to, because a lot of the big podcasts, they take out a bunch of clips from your show and they post like 5 of them. When I first started, he was doing that, and I noticed that by the third video, my views were like plummeting. And then I think it's also that I was like, okay, I'm not a huge podcast yet. I'm still new. So I think you have to go at this more from a perspective of like the relatability. And so now what I've been doing is I take 2 clips from the episode and I do one as like the teaser and then one as like an actual clip of a conversation that I'm having within the podcast that I think is going to land the most. And then I post it on all platforms. But what I also do is I do 2 trends every time I record. So one of them it was so stupid. It was like, because like one of the phrases is like, oh, that ate, which at least say was something to gun. So there's a trending audio where you like pretend to eat. And so on my Friends in Your 20s episode, I put me after giving you all the best friendship advice. And now I got more views than all of the clips from the actual show. So yes, you can take clips from your episode, and I think that's important. But with just that alone, it's not going to be successful. I think that also like think of your podcast as a business. And no one likes to follow businesses that all post about business. Like some of your favorite accounts are like Wendy's, where they're like so goofy and silly, and they may not have even posted about the actual restaurant in a while. You know what I mean? So what I'd like to do now too is include like trendy things that just kind of allude to the show. Then just like bring people to the page, and then they're like, oh, this came from a podcast account. So also just knowing that it doesn't have to just be clips. It's like really important to have like a mix of different content.
So you've broken down some of your social strategy, which is incredibly useful for not just podcasting, but for personal branding and for putting yourself out there and trying to elevate the brand of what you want to be known for, right? And there are all sorts of things that I know that our students are thinking, well, that works for Aleya. Is that going to work for me? How can this work for me? How would you address those students who have those barriers in their mind thinking, I can't create these kinds of shorts and on a podcast and promote that podcast? This is just too much work, and I don't know if it's going to pay off. What advice would you give to those folks?
I would say, do you actually like it? Because for me, like, even though it is a lot of work, like, even my partner pulled me to the side, and the reason why I, like, was able to even find this balance, honestly, is not for myself. It was because he and my friends sat me down and were like, you're running yourself into the ground. You're crying every day. You're saying it's hard. You're stressed out. You're like, you need to come up. This isn't working. So I would say that the way that I did it was I thought what's important to me. And to me, what was important was creating social engagement outside of the podcast too, because even though I'm talking to people on the podcast, it's not recorded live. So I really wanted to like get like the socials boosted so I can talk to my audience directly. That was really important for me, and the lessons were important. So I was like, what I do now is going to be for that. So I think narrowing down what's important to you. So I used to do a carousel photo for every episode. Now I only do that for some episodes that actually need a carousel photos. Not every episode needs it. So I think also that's helping me is just like narrowing down what do I like to do, what goes well with this particular episode. And then, yes, there's a million ways to do it, but do these actually work for me? So I'll look at a lot of different female hosted podcasts, and some of them are like very soft-spoken girls. And so they do a lot of like motivational quotes and like that kind of stuff. My audience, I posted one motivational quote, and I don't think that they had that much advice, but I noticed that they really like relatable stuff, like hand drawing on the pictures, funny reels and everything, and just realizing that like, yeah, there's multiple ways to do it, but which ones do you like? And then which ones out of those land with your audience? That will narrow you down so much. It really will.
It's fun to hear you talk about how the struggle is actually fueling you, right? Because that struggle fueled you to get focused and say, I'm not going to do everything. I'm just going to focus on the things that work. Focusing on the things that work for you specifically, I think is great advice for people taking a podcasting course, for people trying to grow their personal brand, for all sorts of people who see the feedback and get discouraged. Say, well, I have control over not that, but I have control over this one thing, right? Speaking of things we often don't have control of, can you talk a little bit about brand partnerships or collaborations and how you've struggled to find those kinds of opportunities?
Yeah, that has been a struggle. I've had a good amount of brand partnerships, at least over a dozen. But they are hard because especially if you're a smaller creator, you're not represented by an agency, the big fish, small fish, they will try to take advantage of you. There's no other way to word it. They will try to underpay you, not pay you at all. And so my biggest thing with brands is that I treat it like a job. And so when I first started, it was my internship part. So I was okay not doing gifted collaborations, doing things for trade, just to go ahead and get that on my resume. And then I was like, okay, I feel like I've done enough of that. Now I want to move on to maybe it's not paid, but what I'm getting is worth over X amount of money. So I was like, well, the value that I'm getting is something I would already pay for to do. Like if I would spend money on it, but they did it for free now by creating content for them, or just the actual value is around the number that I would charge them for a reel, is that worth it? So that's kind of how I treated it. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay. And I had to really take a step back and again, think about which ones are important to do, because I did hit a point to where I was doing some partnerships and I was like not having fun. I was so unmotivated. I was actually upset making the content. When I was posting it, I was upset. Looking back at it, I didn't like it. And so you have to draw boundaries with yourself, and that one, you can't do everything and you shouldn't do everything. And so really realizing that it's a value-based exchange, they're getting value from you. It's not just you're getting like value from them by, oh, you're going to see product. Like, whoa, you're creating content with them. It's a job. It takes a lot of work. And so knowing that what you're bringing to the table is just as important has really helped me set a boundary. So now I only do paid campaigns now because I've already done so many gifted ones. And now I only do ones that are going to be that I will actually wake up and want to do the content, and that I will edit it and like it. And so if that means that maybe there's a month to where I don't have a partnership, but I got to focus on my podcast, like that's okay. So yeah, it's a job, and like really just treating it as a job and not a hobby, because no one likes to do work where they don't feel like they're being valued.
That's great advice. You pull back the curtain on at what point you decided you wanted to charge, how you decided to charge and value your time, and maybe any other advice you have for working with clients or brands to create content with that specific explicit need for actual results.
Yeah, I would say that I always knew that I wanted to do it paid because I knew that I wanted to do content as a job. So I was like, I need at least to pay for my lifestyle. And I think that once I wanted to do hotels, experiences, events, fashion. I had 2 or at least 1 partnerships in all those categories. So I was like, okay, I need to do paid now. Because now I've gotten the experience. I've already done the hotel thing. I've already done this. And so that's what I do. And also when I was seeing that my content on these brands pages was doing really well. And you'll know too, because they'll start messaging you more, emailing you more. And not gonna lie, when I started to do paid, I lost a lot of partnerships. But I also got a lot more free time. You know what I mean? And it was, maybe I didn't get a free outfit, but that's fine because it doesn't pay the bills, you know? And so for me, I knew that I needed to do paid when I already had the experience. I also needed money and I needed my time to be worth the content too. And so the way that I did that was at first I started like kind of being shy about it, being like, oh, well, these are my rates, like being around the bush. That wasn't working. They will still kind of like be like, well, this, and I was still not having some of a backbone and saying, giving into some of them. Now when I email back and forth, I just go, I only do paid. And unfortunately, I will say that in business, it's different from, I guess it also be from the South, like people tend to beat around the bush, where you reword things to make people comfortable. One thing I've learned is in business, you have to be completely explicit. Like, you have to pretend like you're talking to your friend that will only understand what you're saying if you're completely blunt. You know, like, I can only do this for paid. I can only, like, if this is going to cost this many amount of hours and this is what's going to cost. And so that honestly, I have less partnerships, but the ones that I do have are big because those people were like, you know, your content was worth it. It's fine. And so like one of mine, I did 3 events for her, like event footage for like, geez, like almost 6 months. And then all of a sudden I told her no more, like you have to be paid. I thought she was going to say no. And she kind of like argued back with it a little bit. And now after like really like being up front with her on a business level, I will say that like, I think that she respects me more, honestly. She respects my time more. And she never has asked for a gift to one again. She only offers paid one. And she actually asked me for less content because they know they're paid. So they're like, okay, if I'm going to pay, I only need 2. And so that will also lighten your workload. Whereas when you're doing free stuff is actually asking for even more.
And what counts did you reach? What were your metrics and what did you charge? And how did you come to those decisions?
Yeah, so I will say that like, I feel like my followers on social media haven't increased how I have hoped, but my views have. So that's like one of the things are like so I would say that the metrics I started paying attention to were when I started getting over 1,000 views consistently on all my videos, and then when I was like consistently getting at least over 3K views on everything on my personal, and then I hit 100K on some. So it was kind of like, okay, I know that whatever I post now, the lowest amount of views it will get will be a couple thousand, which is really good. And that still reaches a lot of people. And I have their target audience. But I noticed that when I was making content for the big accounts, and they were posting it as UGC, like just posted as your content, and not on mine, just on theirs, it was consistently hitting over double-digit views. So if I make a TikTok for her, I know that it's going to hit over 10K views for sure. And it could probably hit up to 100. So I knew that that's also what I knew what to charge is when I was like, okay, for my ratio of like 3,000 on Instagram, getting a couple of thousand views is really good because that's maximizing my audience and going outside of it. And then on theirs, it's hitting the double digits. Well, now I know the content is really landing.
And that your specific personal brand is resonating beyond your own account, right?
Exactly.
That's the key, is that this user-generated content is actually has a greater reach because they're able to promote it and they have larger followings and more subs or whatever. So you're able to be a partner, a true partner that helps their brand substantially. Because I know that a lot of people struggle with this conversation. They really do. So what was your pricing? And did you struggle to find that? And how did you find it?
Yeah, I would say that I did struggle with the pricing at first, and I actually took a course like doing it that way I could learn. And so now what I do is I don't even have base rates or anything. I do it really depending on the scope of the work, and that has worked really well. What if there's one TikTok that's a trend that only takes you 30 minutes, but then they want a full edit with it taking 3 hours? And so I do it based on the amount of hours that it will take me to plan, shoot, edit. And then after I do the hourly, I also think, okay, well, am I into content? Because then that also will add it onto it. So the way that I charge was, I did learn this from like another course that I took, was really based on like the nitty gritty. What is in this content? Am I in this content? How long is it going to take me? How long do they want to use it? Do they have the rights to it? Is it on my account or theirs? And then I add all that up.
And what's been the most you've charged or had for an outcome like this?
Yeah, I had an $1,000 package, so that's been my highest one, and I am obviously like aiming for higher than that as well. And so that's also been like why I do want to like grow all my stuff too. And so the way that I did that one was it wasn't just for one video, it was a package. And so really getting it to where people are buying multiple things at once. So my biggest tip would be trying to package things and don't just sell like one reel. Because if you only sell like one trend, like I understand people don't want to pay that much. So now, even when I do them, like I don't really do one-off content. I will only do it if it's like they're at least hitting two things.
That's really good and good advice. Some advice that I've taken to heart from some business courses that I have also taken is that idea of pricing for outcome and saying, this is the impact generated. And you do the math there for their ROI, and you're able to say, one, I can't work with you because that's just not going to have enough impact for your business. And I want to help you grow your business, right? But if I do this many, right, then I know we're going to make an impact together.
Exactly.
And I know that outcome is worth this much because I know you will get this many impressions and this much value from my personal brand helping and partnering with you. And yes, I'll win too, but you will win too. And making sure that you're framing in terms of outcomes and you have that bare minimum level of engagement or to work with your personal brand. And that's part of how that conversation starts, right?
Exactly. And so that also helps you from being judged based on just one video or one thing that you made. Because it's social media, like you can make something stellar and maybe it doesn't do as good, but that will like increase like your chances and your amount of times to get seen. And then also it frees up your schedule doing it that way. Like if I was doing it the old way, I wouldn't have had time for a podcast because I'm making all of this gifted content or all this like really low content. But now like I have a couple less, and so I also have a lot more free time too.
And pricing based on outcome and values, right? It makes you never want to charge hourly for something that is not valued hourly. Because if it takes you less time to edit because you have so many years of editing experience, if it takes you less time to script, you're not supposed to be punished for that. So value-based pricing is what it's called, right? Outcome-based pricing is the way to go for user-generated content for these brand collaborations and partnerships.
Exactly.
I'm glad to hear you're at that level now. You've reached that level of outcome-based.
Thank you.
Do you have any other advice for our students who are aspiring to get to that level of outcome-based or value-based pricing to be able to say, I have a package, this is my minimum package, I'd love to work with you. What advice do you have to get them there?
I think the two biggest things are going to be having the courage to reach out and more than the reach out, the only thing more important than a reach out is a follow-up. Following up, I would say, is the most important things. And I have probably messed that up sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just realized it's been 3 months and I never followed up. But having the courage to reach out initially and then also follow up, but also having the courage to be okay with a no. So like there has been some brands to where I'm like, but I really, really want these clothes. Like I really want it. But I have to say no because it's not about that. And so also be okay with you hearing no, because also like, let's say for instance, a brand reaches out to you, tell them, I need you to pay. And they're like, well, no, we only do gifted. And then you go, okay, they're probably never going to pay you ever because they're going to know that you're going to say okay to it. So that was like my biggest thing, was also learning that I have to say no. That way they take it seriously than saying no. Because I know a lot of creators, a lot of my friends that have a lot more followers than me still do gift it. And it's because someone will tell them no and they're like, well, I do want it. So then they still say yes. So being okay with just not doing it and not getting the product, and maybe you have to buy it, but that's okay because it took you less time to just buy it and now you're even supposed to make user.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you're talking about, because you spend your hard-earned money to buy the thing. Well, your brand and your personal brand is what you value it at to a certain extent. It's what the market values it at, and it's what you value it at. And we come to an agreement, right? Based on that particular brand and that particular person. So I'm glad to hear that you're encouraging your friends to get away from the gifted content approach, right?
Yeah, because it is so crazy, the difference and how much different creators get paid. Like, you have some people getting paid thousands to millions, and then you have some people doing free work, and it's not even all the time. Like, yes, followers and that kind of stuff has an impact on how high you can get, but there are people who are really big that are still doing small numbers or still doing gifted, and it's all about like really like having to set your foot down and being like, no. And so that is the hardest part, especially if you don't have like an agency or anything, because you're having to do that for yourself.
And sometimes it makes sense to do gifted because you want to be associated with that brand, right? Like,
Exactly.
we're not knocking gifting. We're not saying don't do that. That's a great way to grow.
Yeah, it is. But if it's just to where you know that like you don't really want to do it, so like if like 4 seasons, I would do gifted for them. We're here. But if I'm like, I already have this product and I already know that I can go without it, or maybe it's not going to land with my audience as much, where I just know that like, again, like I think you just know when you should work with a brand at a paid level. There's some where you might like be like, okay, and maybe we'll do that. But I think just exercising that bone of doing paid is really important. That way, when you do gifted, it's not because you always do it. It's just because you want to do it that one time.
Please share your full name, how people can find you, your social handles, your podcast name, all the good stuff.
Yes, thank you. Well, my name is Aleya Antoine. And so my profile on all platforms is at Aleya Antoine, Aleya Antoine. And then my podcast is called Tease. On Instagram, it's at Tease Pod. And on everything else, it's Tease Podcast. YouTube.
And it's TEASE?
Yes. Yes. So just Tease, plain and simple. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube at Tease Podcast. And it's available on all listening platforms. And yeah, I have it on every social media. I'm trying to get to Twitter. That is my next goal, is get the Twitter active too. But yeah, you can find me on all platforms at Aleya Antoine, at TeasePod. And when you find one, you'll find the other because they're both tagged in the bio.
Excellent. Want to find you, they can go. Do you have a website as well?
I do, but it's just like for the podcast, it's going to be listen.teaspodcast.com. And it just has all of the links in the bio and everything.
Excellent. And Aleya, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and share your wisdom and your struggles and your triumphs and your advice for people who are launching a podcast and a personal brand, because they really go hand in hand, right?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Like, this was so much fun.